Let's talk thin crust pizza. We can get right into this today. We have a lot of stuff to cover, but really a lot of great information. And if you haven't tried thin crust pizza yet, it is a must. It's just awesome. Different texture. I've got my baking steels preheating here at 500 degrees for the last hour. It's at 450, but for the last hour, these steels are scorching hot. We're gonna make dough, but I've got some dough sitting out. This is 150 grams, which is the ideal size for our thin crust pizza dough, which is a little bit different than our traditional 72-hour dough. And before I even get into that, let's just talk about the dough in thin crust. One thing you can do is just take your regular dough and take one of these, a rolling pin, and roll it flat like a map, like 1/4 inch thick. Just knock all the air bubbles out of it, and we're gonna crisp it up on the steel. It is awesome. Generally speaking, that's what we do. We just take our regular dough and shrink it down to 150 grams and just roll it really flat and dock it maybe. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, what that means, and just cook it. And it's awesome. Now, with that said, we're gonna do a blog post on this, so we thought we would tweak it just a little bit, and some of the experts, I don't know if this is called Roman style or not. It's really, we're not gonna get too technical here. What we're gonna do is add a little bit of oil to our dough to make it a little bit unique. Just change the texture a little bit. So we have a recipe. Let's get right into this today. Flour, salt, water, yeast, and oil. We're gonna use avocado oil. And we're gonna give the amount of the ingredients as we go. We will do a follow-up. We'll put it in the post as well, just so you'll have these ingredients. But we have 270 grams of bread flour. And we love bread flour. If all you have is all-purpose flour, that's fine. My only recommendation is go organic if you can. Just healthier, less stuff that could go wrong with it. So organic, we're using bread flour. Yeast is, again, so this is gonna make about 3 doughs, 350 gram doughs, which is a pretty good amount. The yeast is 1 gram of yeast. All I do is I put that in my flour mixture and I whisk it up, okay? The water is 180 grams of filtered water. So what I like to do with this first is take my salt and dissolve. I try to dissolve it. I do the best I can. Someone called me out on this last week. That wasn't dissolved all the way. Well, I'm trying to soften the blow into the yeast. And so I do that by just kind of putting it in the water first. Because if the salt comes in direct contact with the yeast, it might, kill some of that yeast early, which we don't want to do. So anyway, I've kind of dissolved it a little bit. I might want to wait 30 seconds. But in my experience, this is gonna be perfect, okay? The yeast, this is 8 grams of salt and 180 grams of filtered water. I take a spoon or a spatula, and I love these GIR ones here, and I literally just kind of mix it up. I'm gonna be adding oil to this mixture last, okay? So first I wanna do is incorporate the flour and the water together. Ooh, my first few times I do this, until I get comfortable, I'm gonna use a timer for like 3 or 4 minutes, okay? The nice thing about this bowl is I don't need to remove it from the bowl. I can make less, I can keep all the mess kind of inside of the bowl, which is nice. And then once it starts to warm me, I can kind of do this with my hand. I can press it together. And just make sure you get all those dry pieces of flour kind of incorporated. I'm just trying to prevent any dry clumps. Guys with me so far? Very high skill level here, guys, you can tell, right? And now it's formed a ball mass. I feel pretty good about this. Once it forms that ball, last I'm going to add the oil in. Okay, and I'm using avocado oil because it's a very neutral oil. I literally just pour it in. And again, I'm just going to incorporate that oil into this and pressing it again. And I do this for another minute or two. And what that oil is going to do, it's going to seep in through like the gluten strands and soften them, right? Soften that network. It's kind of lubed up now. It's going to soften that network a little bit and allow this texture to be just a bit different than if I wasn't using oil. After a couple of minutes of this, I'm done, okay? You can see I've got my dough in my pan. I will cover this up with saran wrap, okay? And cover up with saran wrap and let this thing sit for 24 hours. And when I say 24 hours, I'm gonna leave it at room temperature for half of that time. So in this case, it's 11 o'clock. By 9 o'clock tonight, that's gonna be going into the refrigerator, okay? Only because I like my dough cold when I'm making my dough balls. So if I'm making a 24-hour dough, I want it to be cold at the end. I could go 24 hours and then go into the fridge. The point is, I'm gonna leave this in the bulk state for a few days because I think that's where we're gonna get all that flavor and texture built into this dough, okay? And why don't we pause, and so I'm gonna cover this up, leave it at room temp, and then go into the fridge for 2 more days. If I don't have that much time, I can use this dough tomorrow after 24 hours. So 3 days is the ultimate dream setup for your thin crust, not necessary. Okay, so any questions on that?
Yes.
Great, bring them on.
What's your recipe?
What's the recipe for?
The dough you just made.
Okay, great question.
A bunch of people asking amount of oil.
Oh, good, okay, so, okay, that's a great question. How much ingredients did I use? Okay, so here's what we did. It was, write this down, take some notes. It was 270 grams of organic bread flour, 170 grams of filtered water, 8 grams of sea salt, 1 gram of yeast, active dry yeast, and 10 grams of avocado oil.
Next question. Why avocado oil?
Trying something new. It's the same avocado oil we actually use in our English muffins. It's got a high smoke point, so it's not gonna like give any kind of weird flavors. Olive oil would work too. Canola oil would work also. I like avocado oil. It's been the rage lately in the test kitchen here, so we're giving it a go. First time ever.
I only have the yeast I have to activate first. Do I need the instant kind?
So explain that. What kind of yeast is that? Like what is that called?
I think they assume that you have to activate all these. So
We're using active dry yeast, and we're eliminating that step because we're fermenting our dough. It's always gonna hydrate. I mean, if you're making a faster dough within like say 6 to 8 hours, you might wanna hydrate it first. In our experience, we find that step to be unnecessary. It seems to hydrate over time in the first 24 hours the same. And I've done this hundreds and hundreds of times, and only one time did my yeast not activate. One time. And I think it's because I put like the salt right in there with it. I didn't mix it. One time out of thousands probably. So it's gonna be fine.
water temp?
Water temp is room temp. Good question. What is the temperature of the water when I put it into my dough? And because I'm leaving my dough at room temperature, I just keep my water at the same.
Very new to pizza. Why 24?
Oh, great question. And you know what? This is an amazing question. I'm very new to pizza. what's the deal with 24 hours? Like, why do I wait 24 hours? It is a huge difference in flavors. A couple of things going on. The glutens begin to break down, and so it becomes easier on our system to digest after 24 hours, okay? The flavor, what happens now, if I took this same dough that we just mixed and I take the smell of this, it smells like flour and water, okay? But when I cover it, and tomorrow, when I take a smell of this dough, you're gonna smell the alcohol forming, and the gas, the natural gas is inside of this dough starting to kind of change, right? Change their properties, and it becomes, you can smell the flavor basically of alcohol. It's unbelievable the difference. That's just after 24 hours. Then you put it in the refrigerator, and it's still going to ferment, still changing. However, at a slower rate. But we have found, and we've done this study with, like, I think Kenji did a great study, Peter Reinhardt. After 3 days of this, we find it to be the ultimate. It's at its peak performance, and we found it's like days 3, 4, and 5. The flavor is just really robust and incredible. I could make pizza out of this dough here in a couple of hours with more yeast and hot water. There'll be no flavor at all to it. So 24 hours minimum, and up to 3 or 4 or 5 days, incredible the differences in flavors. And my recommendation is to make a dough and taste it at 12, 24, 48 hours. And it's a night and day difference. Same ingredients, only thing we're adding is time. And the time makes a huge, remarkable difference in the texture and the flavor of the dough. Whew, that was long-winded.
Yes, we're good. When do you take it out of the fridge the next day to ball it?
Great question. When do I take the dough out of the fridge to ball up? So I take it out of the fridge on game day. And game day to me is pizza day. So if I'm making pizza tomorrow night at 6 p.m., I will take the dough out about 6 hours before I make my dough balls, because I want the dough to relax before I stretch it out. And like our bodies, when it's cold, we're stiff. So dough is the same thing. You want it to get to room temperature, not fast. You don't go from like cold to sauna. You go, gradually you get there. And we find after you make your balls and 3 or 4 hours later, that dough's supple and ready to stretch.
Does it make a difference if you plastic wrap the bowl versus the dough?
Whew, yeah, great question. Do I plastic wrap the bowl or just the dough? Well, the dough is going to expand, so you want to make sure you have enough air in between the wrap and the dough. So I say wrap the bowl. Give it room to expand naturally.
Use a Danish dough hook when you're making.
Yeah, the Danish dough hook. Actually, I have one. I got one. I was super excited about it. But it's kind of a pain in the ass because the dough just gets stuck in between. As you can notice, when I whisk, it's always dry ingredients, right? Oh, I whisk salt and water together. But when I'm using flour and I whisk, it's only with dry ingredients because all the dough gets tangled up inside of here. And go ahead and try to clean these. It's a pain in the butt. You can freeze dough. That's the question is, when do I freeze dough? And I freeze it after I make my dough balls. So if I want at least 24 hours later, like tomorrow, for example. Tomorrow I'm gonna make dough balls, but I found out I got invited to a trip to Hawaii. Not happening, but if I did, and I had this dough, I would take it, make balls, and then freeze it right at that point. Make my dough balls, cover those balls up, and freeze them. And I like to use these delis to freeze my dough. Again, it's gonna freeze at this point, but when it starts to expand, it has room to grow. Anything else? Ooh.
How long can the dough last in the fridge?
I think we're at the maximum question today. No?
That's the most we're at.
Yeah, it's great. I'm joking. We love the questions. Keep them going. What is the longest what?
How long can it stay in the fridge?
How long can the dough stay in the fridge? If it's in the bulk state, we find like 7 days max, and not plan. I would only plan 5 days. If it goes a little bit longer, you're okay. But we talked about the gluten's breaking down. Well, now what happens is The yeast is not going to be as active. It's going to have a lot of flavor, but you're going to lose the vibrancy of the dough. So I hope that helps. So 5 days max.
Different types of salt make a difference.
Different types
Himalayan, sea salt. Whatever.
Ooh, I would experiment. I would just experiment. We use sea salt from Whole Foods, and it's great. But we've tried like Duxbury salt, which is really nice salt, like flaky. I just think those are almost like cosmetic salts, right? Like
finishing salt.
It's a
garnish.
finishing salt, like a garnish, because it's so beautiful, the flakes. I don't want to use those expensive, beautiful flakes inside of my dough, but I will save them for on top of my pizza, right? Or my eggs on my pizza. That'd be a nice way to use them.
You use a stand mixer.
Can I use a stand mixer to mix my dough? Yes. Just do it delicately. You don't want to mix until this thing is smooth. We found, because we barely knead our dough, we try to mimic that in a mixer, which is difficult. It's also a pain to clean. As you can see, I'm done with my dough. Just use a bowl. Got nothing to clean up here. Super easy.
How many pizzas does that recipe make?
This makes, that batch we made, the 270 gram batch, makes 3 thin crust pizzas this size, which you're going to get to in just about 2 minutes.
Can I add seasonings into the dough when mixing? What would you add?
Can I add seasonings into the dough when mixing? Yeah, totally. Why not? If you like that.
Instead of using flour and semolina on the peel, can I use just semolina?
Okay. We're going to get into making, and that'd be a good segue into making pizza. Let's get right into it. Someone just asked, on my peel, can I use semolina flour? Instead of just using semolina flour and flour, can I use just semolina flour? And the answer is a resounding yes. Love semolina flour. I love the semolina flour because it's a really nice ball bearing for the dough to slide with. And that's what's great about it. All right. So let's get right into this. In fact, I got some semolina flour here. Before I get into the dough, like I always, here's my peel. And I'm going to do that today, just for someone special out there. I'm going to only use semolina flour as my ball bearings. And I lightly dust it, okay? You can see I don't have a lot on here. The number one goal is to make sure this dough is sliding on top. And if anything, that might be a little heavy on semolina flour, but for the sake of this class, I want to emphasize that you need something on your peel so this dough slides, okay? Could I use less? Yes, I'm not going to. That's my ball bearings. Next, I just take this and I put it aside, okay? I'll put that aside and get right into making this pizza. I've got the oven preheating at 500 degrees, okay, for the last hour. I need that baking steel really, really hot. And I can't do that in 15 minutes. It's got to be an hour. That's for best results, okay? So that's preheating. Meanwhile, I've got my dough here, and I'm going to flour up my workstation in front of me a little bit. I just use a little bit of flour, okay? And my dough comes out. And it's small. This is a 150 gram dough ball. So it's not super big. I'm going to flip over both sides just so it doesn't stick. In fact, I'm going to probably use a lot of flour today because I'm using a rolling pin. All right. And I'm going to press it out as big as I can. And I can be aggressive here. I don't say that often with dough. But since we're making a thin crust, I can be aggressive. And I press it out to its round. And now what I'm going to do is grab a rolling pin. And I can flour on top of this dough a little bit. I can shake that off afterwards. That's just going to help prevent this pin from sticking to the this thing. What do you call this thing? A rolling pin. If you don't have a rolling pin, a wine bottle is cool. Impress your friends. I always impress my wife when I do that, the wine bottle and dough. All right, so I can see I'm just I pick it up in between presses just so it doesn't get stuck. and I'm being, you know, I want to press this out into maybe a, you know, 12 or 13 inch round. I'm patient, right? Can you see good there? Sure. Yeah. And just keep pressing and patient. And it's getting to be a pretty good size. You can see the thickness of it. I want to get a little bit thinner because we want it like crackery. And I'm just about where I want to be, thickness wise. Boom, boom. And my last roll. Almost round, not bad, right? Next, what I'm gonna do is slide this onto my peel, okay? Let's clean up a little bit around here. Remember that semolina flour I put on here? So before I do anything else, I'm gonna give this thing a little shake. See how it's loose? It's sliding like a hockey puck. That is critical, okay? And my thickness, it's probably about, what, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch? Ish.
Sure.
Yeah, stretch it a little bit more if I want, right? Definitely not a 1/4, yeah. It's definitely, it's too thin, it's thinner than that. All right, now what I'm gonna do is dock it.
Ooh. Doctor.
You gotta be a little careful here. I'm gonna basically, when I say dock it, I'm gonna stretch this a little bit wider, right? When I say dock it, I'm gonna take one of these things and I'm just gonna kind of lightly press it, almost like aerating the dough, right? And what that's gonna do is make sure this dough doesn't like blow up in the oven too much, because we want to eliminate that from happening. And I'm not pressing down super hard. If I don't have that, I can use a fork, but you gotta be careful because you don't wanna go all the way through the dough because then it's gonna get stuck. So once I dock it, I wanna give it a little shake again. And look at that, it's still loose like a hockey puck. It's still sliding, awesome, right? And now we can get into the sauce a little bit here. Sauce it up right in the middle, and I bring it all the way to the edge, but I don't go over the edge, just like life. And once I sauce it, you get the basil out too. I'm gonna probably do that afterwards. And now for the cheese, you can do really whatever you would like to do. I'm gonna use a few different kinds of cheese. I'm gonna use a fontina. I'm gonna lightly just kind of grate it up here, right? Directly on the pizza. And if you guys have been following us, you know that we always grate our own cheese with the Wonder Shredder, by the way. Awesome. I'm gonna take some low moisture mozzarella in my Wonder Shredder. So I'm using a combination of different cheeses here. Okay. Let's see if I can get that spin up. Oil maybe? Yeah, we stick on. Cheese it up. And I'm going to use some fresh mozzarella. I'm using 3 different cheeses on my pizza just because I can, right? So for my cheese, I just break it up. I break the mozzarella up by hand, place it on top. It's a pretty good amount of cheese. If you don't want to use the traditional toppings like this, you could go with whatever. I don't know what you name some cheeses. I'm gonna actually, just for fun, I'm gonna use a little bit of dried oregano also. Just a little bit. And that's it. Now, before I do anything else, let's see if my ball bearings are still working and this thing's still sliding like a hockey puck, which is awesome. I'm gonna go right into my oven, open it up, back of the peel to the back of the steel, and just slide it like a hockey puck. And now what I'm gonna do is take my timer, just for fun, I'm going to check it out after 2 minutes. And after 2 minutes, I'm going to maybe rotate it and then just cook it for maybe 2 more minutes. And that's it, right? It'll be about a 4 or 5 minute bake, thin crust. And we might as well hang out here, right? Get to some more questions and check this thing out when it's done. It's gonna be incredible. And this is when I wish we had someone here to enjoy this with us next time.
Full fat or skim milk? No moisture.
Whew, someone asked, that's a great question. Low fat or whole milk, whole fat, not low
Tons
fat.
of fat.
Tons of
All
fat. Yeah, we don't use any of that non-fat stuff ever in my yogurt and anything, by the way. I get mad when I talk about this. Use full fat just because it actually melts better. It doesn't brown as fast. And it's just, I think it just tastes better as cheese.
Use parchment paper.
Ooh, good question. Can I use parchment paper as opposed to, the flouring? Yeah, if you don't have a peel, parchment paper is actually a great idea. The only thing you got to be careful with is not to use the broiler with parchment paper, because the broiler obviously will light that paper on fire. I know that from experience. Happens almost every time. So keep that. Oh, door's closed a little bit. Keep that parchment safe from the broiler. Okay.
You have a lot of people asking about the temperature. People using the broiler. Did we use the broiler?
So we snuck the broiler on for just a minute, just to get that steel really hot. It's not necessary for this style pizza, but because we're doing a class setting, we're going to try to just expedite that cooking process a little bit. But actually, we made this yesterday without a broiler. And our test run yesterday, no broiler, straight bakes. It was awesome too, by the way. So let me see. It's been about 2 minutes. I'm going to open the oven up, rotate it just a little bit, go, and give it like maybe another 2 minutes. We'll be done. Timers are really coming in handy, by the way. Always recommend this with pizza in the oven.
Pretty good.
Yeah, you can probably keep it on there. It hasn't even gone on yet, so it's good.
Here's a good question.
Okay.
What's the role of oven heat in pizza baked? I used to, before looking at your videos, I would cook at 400 and 420. Never came after it. Why? Why high heat? Why quick cooking? Why?
Ooh, so that's a great question. Why high heat? Why are we using 500 degrees when making pizza? Well, we do with the baking steel because we've found that, and this is really what excited me when we first came out like years ago. We know metal conducts energy really well, but it stores energy. We have found 500 degrees Fahrenheit with a baking steel inside creates so much energy that it replicates what a wood oven can do at like 800 or 900 degrees. And that's the short version of this. But basically at 500 degrees with a baking steel, it is like the ultra, it's basically a deck oven, which is why, is it looking good? Okay.
Good.
Yeah, okay. Take it out there. Oh, shoot. All right. We're going to take this out here. Actually, I got a little too much color on top. I'm just going to move this to the bottom steel for the next minute because I want, we had the broiler on, it actually kind of fried the top of it a little bit. So I've got 2 racks of steels. If I only had 1 steel, I'd be bird dogging this thing more because I had the broiler on. But since I have 2 steels, once I put it in the bottom steel, I'm not worried about it getting any darker on top. Just the bottom now to catch up to the top. Which, did I answer that question on the heat?
Oven rack position if you have 1 steel.
Oven rack position if I have 1 steel is top rack. And this, I want to clarify back on the 500 degrees. So we found that to be the sweet spot, and the steel at 500 degrees is like the dream setup. We've created like a deck oven environment in a home for pizza makers, which is like the dream. It's why it works so beautifully. We're cooking pizzas in like, anywhere from 3 to like 6 or 7 minutes, depending on the style, which is just incredible.
How soon can you cook the next pizza?
Usually by the time I'm done making, so the question was, how soon can I make my next pizza? And if we have one steel in the oven, usually after I remove that pizza, by the time I make my second pizza, that steel is back up to temperature again. And I want to reiterate that the steel bounces back to 500 degrees super fast. Unlike a pizza stone, and this was the breakthrough that I found, is that the pizza stone continuously, does this throughout the evening. If you're making like 4 or 5 pizzas, or even 2, it starts at 500, and after the first hour, it's at like 400 degrees. It just cannot get back up to temperature again. Whereas the steel continuously just bounces right back to wherever you set it. In this case, 500 degrees. It bounces back again, bounces back. And we can just crank out pizza after pizza after pizza.
What is the white pokey docker tool called?
That's a great question. This is called a docker. Available at most kitchen shops. And I think they use it in baking, pie baking. You've seen like these people like do this. I mean, a fork works too. We'll link to this somewhere to help out. It's called a docker, I think. I hope.
What is in the bottom? What is in the bottom that looks delicious?
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Oh, this looks amazing. So hit bagel. So you can see first underneath is cooked beautifully. On top, a little aggressive maybe, but whatever. It looks amazing. A little basil, right? And a little crispiness. It's really pretty, guys. It's gorgeous. We can see how crispy this is. Like that's amazing right there. Like I can hold this up with one hand. Oh, now I got 2 hands. It gets hot. And that's the crispiness of the steel. Boom. Beautiful. I want to slice this up. You can be able to hear, oh, I almost go. The crispiness, just awesomeness. There it is. Our beautiful thin crust pizza. Any more questions? And I need somebody here with us. Who we got?
Favorite sauce recipe?
Favorite sauce recipe. Crush tomatoes, find your favorite plum tomatoes and add sea salt. That's it. It is awesome. That's all you need. All right, you guys, thank you. This class rocked. Really fired up for the thin crust. Remember to email us, info@bakingsteel if you're local. You want to come hang out with us in class next time. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our page and like this post, please. It really helps. You guys rock. Thank you.